Hi there, I'm Dan Snierson from EW, and you are here for the 92Y panel for This Is Us. Maybe you've heard of it, time-tripping, mystery-wrapped hit family drama. Makes you kind of go, huh, huh. Anyway, the show finished its fourth season a few months ago, and the actors will be joining us today to take you inside the Pierson family saga. But we begin with the man who makes the magic for our characters and who makes your tear ducts work overtime, This Is Us creator Dan Fogelman. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Dan.
Hello, Dan. Let's start at the end of season 4 with the fight between Randall and Kevin, which is about as acrimonious as you can get at without raising your voice, certainly. Did it just feel like an inevitable mushrooming of seeds that were planted decades ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think, they're fighting about really, really specific circumstances, which is ultimately about their mother's medical care. But what they're really fighting about is their place in the family, their place in relationship to their mother. So it's fair to say that this is a fight that's been building for 39 years and just kind of gets exploded on that front lawn because of the circumstances at play, but not because necessarily just of those circumstances. There's a lot of primal stuff at play here.
Yeah, and what's so powerful and devastating, like I was saying, was how calm the brothers are during the fight. These barbs are designed for maximum damage. What resonates with you about creating that fight? And were there maybe even flashier and louder versions of that clash in the writer's room as you were figuring it out, and then you realized, no, this was exactly the way to play it?
Yeah, no, it was greatly talked about. My little sister was a consultant on the show from the very beginning. In Rhode Island, and for whatever reason, she still continues to get the scripts sent to her. So she is one of the few people in the world that gets to read the scripts ahead of time. And she had called me to say, Dan, I just read the finale. Like, I'm worried about these two. And she never makes that phone call. Like, I hadn't even realized she was still getting the scripts. It was something we debated a lot in the writer's room, the level of the fight, the build of the fight, who would say the worst thing, who would the audience ultimately side with. Could you understand both perspectives? And then, ultimately, it was pretty much all done in one take on air. They did Sterling and Justin did about 6 takes, I would say, 6 or 7. They ranged in degrees of explosiveness. They kind of went like this and then came back down. But because we had decided to shoot this so you could really be with the two brothers and be inside of one roving camera and one take for the bulk of the really heated, loaded part of the fight. Ultimately, I went with a kind of quieter take. These were two brothers who were not saying things necessarily in the explosion of the moment. These were curated things that have weighed on them for quite a long period of time. And the thought was, this is their moment to look each other in the eye and say the thing.
Yeah, that fracture was building, well, like we said, for decades in a way, but certainly over the last few episodes of season 4. I understand that the crew was a little divided on set. There was a team Randall and team Kevin. Can you talk a little bit about the writer's room, what that was like? Those conversations must have been interesting, which sides people were taking.
Yeah, I mean, when even writing it, in the stage direction writing it, each time one of the brothers would land a blow, I had scripted in like a stage direction, just like, oof.
Right.
And the next one would be like double oof, just to give the scene the proper rhythm of how I wanted it to breathe. There were definitely debates where we get to ultimately are the 2 final lines from each brother. It's Randall saying to Kevin, Dad died ashamed of you, which is Kevin's primal wound. And it's Kevin saying back to Randall, the worst day of my life wasn't the day he died. It was the day they brought you home. And ultimately, it felt to many like that line from Randall was like, that line from Kevin to Randall was oof, right? But a lot of people, both in our room and in our audience, were very not pleased with how Randall had handled a lot of the dynamics leading up to that fight in terms of forcing his mother into the medical treatment and the Alzheimer's clinical trial, et cetera, et cetera. So it felt like we had the latitude to kind of go in that direction. But both lines are pretty brutal because they really strike at the core of a lot of what haunts these two men.
Yeah. The brothers' conflict also stemmed from care over Rebecca, and we know that she's in a declining mental state. We know that it is a form of dementia, Alzheimer's. Why was that such an important story for you to tell in the back half of the series?
Well, I think these are, they were defined by the sins and successes of our parents. And these boys have one remaining parent left alive, and that's Rebecca. And she's always been a complicated relationship for both men. Randall was a mommy's boy his whole life. He's lived to please and take care of his mother. And Kevin's had a more complex relationship with his mother. The child who maybe didn't get the third child, the middle child, who didn't seem to be the problematic one in multiple ways, or the one in need, so was left aside a little bit more by his mother. And those, not only are the dynamics between the boys and their mother, but it becomes a dynamic and the resentment between both brothers about their mother. Randall feeling like the martyr who has taken care of his mother his entire life, when Kevin was always the narcissist taking care of himself. Kevin, sick of the routine of the martyr, and the self-worth that being a martyr gives oneself in his mind's eye. And so I think that's really what's at the core of this here. This is in some ways no longer about Rebecca. Rebecca is a cipher through which the brothers are competing. And then in some ways it is about Rebecca, this primal relationship of a boy and his mother, and with all the complexities that we constantly are reminding ourselves in our writer's room, that these are two alpha males who grew up in the same home starting on the exact same day. They're ostensibly twin brothers who couldn't be more dissimilar. And that's complicated, specifically when you're competing for a mother's attention as a child and now competing to be her quote unquote caretaker as adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Rebecca, though, and her journey ahead, which feels a little ominous, for a show that treasures memories and romanticizes memories, the idea that Rebecca might not have all of hers, it just feels so tragic.
Yeah. It's a show about memory and it's about time. And this was always part of our plan since inception of where Rebecca's storyline would go. I think one of the common links that links us as human beings is the experience of time and how it feels endless when you're young, and how as you start getting older, you cling to it a little more. And as you get much older, you look back. And that's always really been where the show is, the nostalgia of our childhoods and the wistfulness of our older years when we look backwards. And I think taking one of our central characters and essentially robbing her, or potentially considering robbing her of the device that frames our television show, was always something that was really interesting to us. And I know where we're going. I think it becomes interesting for both Mandy as an actress, but also hopefully we'll say something about this weird dance we're all doing by living and loving and breeding and hating and worrying. And that's the hope, at least. Okay.
Looking back at season 4 a little more, what was the episode or storyline that you're most proud of, would you say?
I really loved what we did with the brothers competing over Rebecca's care. I was very proud of how we ended our season, specifically our second to last episode, where you really explored the sliding doors versions of Randall's life as he's simultaneously in therapy with Pamela Adlon, looking at the way that the movements of our lives can shift ever so slightly with just the slightest pivot. I thought our crew came together and did an incredible job there executing that in that storyline. I was also just very proud of what we did earlier in the season involving Jack and Rebecca as Randall starts questioning his place in the world, and particularly his place in the world as a young Black man. In our episodes that involved Deja and Malik bringing over some of their stuff into their home with their families, as you're also in the past dealing with Randall questioning how he's been raised and how they converse about his race, particularly with his father. I thought it was challenging, and I thought what our writers did was in its own way brave and unique. And so I'm proud when we take those leaps, and I'm proud when we execute them well, which I think we did. So yeah, those are a couple of the areas.
Yeah. The show is juggling a lot of time periods and a lot of characters and always some new ones. Season 4 obviously introduced a bunch. Which storyline proved the hardest to pull off that maybe gave the writers the most agita?
We had a lot of complex stuff this season. I was incredibly proud of the ambition of the season and where I think the level at which I think we executed as a group of writers. The Cassidy Afghanistan storyline, and particularly in the first half of the season, was really challenging for us because we are not a room full of veterans. So we had brought in a consultant on the show who I met through a series of interviews named James Laporta, who's now a reporter on kind of world affairs, I believe, for the AP, but had been covering the Pentagon for Newsweek at the time. And he became a big part in us shaping Cassidy's story based off his own experiences and the experiences he knew. But that's always a challenging thing when we dive into a kind of area, whether it be Alzheimer's or Afghanistan, where we don't necessarily have a lot of firsthand experience in the writer's room, but we want to attack it correctly and we want to do it right. And so it requires a tremendous amount of research and a tremendous amount of delicate touch. The balancing act is always that you want to not glorify a really, really impossible and often confusing war. You also don't want to make every person who has given their time and their life to that war feel like somebody who is suffering from PTSD. And so there's a really delicate balance and a responsibility that comes with kind of trying to get it right and working with the right people and hiring the right people to get it right. And so that was a challenging area for us and one that I was ultimately very proud of. Similarly, we added a character to the show this year who was visually impaired. And getting that right is a challenge, working with organizations, working with our actor, finding that actor in Blake, who could then be a blind musician going up on stage and being able to pull off in front of 20,000 people a live performance of a song. These are challenging things that our crew and casting directors and writers continue attacking, and I'm very proud of them for.
Yeah. Speaking of challenges, 2 things in the world have shaken us to our foundation right now, that being the global pandemic and Black Lives Matter. Amidst all this police brutality, the show has thoughtfully delved into issues of race, of course, but I'm just wondering how you might go about reflecting those 2 realities in the show this season.
We're figuring it out. I mean, I think all shows are figuring out right now how current world events play into their shows. We have always tried to attack things that affect the day-to-day lives of us as a community, meaning Americans. We've tried to, where possible, right or wrong, keep away from world events and particularly politics. This moment in time we find ourselves in is something different. And we both, if we attack it, it's something we want to attack the right way. We do feel uniquely suited in our show to kind of mark this moment. But it's complicated territory. We've had a complicated couple of months in our Zoom writers' room that I feel are kind of unique to our writers' room and the kind of openness with which we kind of converse and lay things bare. So I have a plan. Much of it will be dictated by when our show is ultimately shooting and airing. And that's really all I can say. But we're mindful and we're hopeful that we can get something right here.
Got it. Okay. And finally, I wanted to ask you, as a showrunner, you map out all the stories you want to tell in a particular season, but you can't always get to everything. So I'm wondering, was there one story that you simply ran out of time or bandwidth to tell in season 4 that you were planning to, that you probably would hit in season 5?
There's always stuff that gets left on the drawing board. We have some storylines always on our board that get kind of pushed to the next board, not because we're not interested in them, but because we don't have room for them. In particular, there was some stuff coming with Deja and Malik that we just weren't able to get to this season. We hope they'll be able to execute the same type of material in the next upcoming season. it tends to be a lot of our characters that are not in our essentially big eight and the younger versions of our big eight. That we tend to we have so many things we want to do, but we also have to stay focused, and we can only do so many specialized episodes. So we have a lot coming with the kids. I think that's a big one. Randall's children, Deja and Tess and Annie. Things that we didn't necessarily delay, but we haven't had the opportunity to get more and more time with. And my hope is that this season will provide that time.
Okay, well, lots to look forward to. We have a bunch of cast interviews to get to, so I will leave you on your way. But Dan, thanks so much for setting us up and informing us on all the good stuff to come and the stuff that happened. And congrats on season 4. And we'll see you soon, I hope.
Thanks, Dan. I look forward to it.
All right, Jack is back. We've now reached the Milo Ventimiglia part of the show, which is a very good part of the show to be in. Let's welcome the man who plays Jack Pierson to perfection and has the screaming fans to prove it. How are you, Milo?
I'm doing good, Dan. I'm doing good. It's good to see your face, man.
You too. We've got a mustache going, so I feel like we're 1988 or so.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little more quarantine mustache.
Yeah.
I had a nice Jack having baby's beard.
Okay.
And then I got a little tired of that, so I just clipped it down to a mustache, and now I'm going the other way and growing my beard back out to get back to work. So
always looking good, no matter what you're rocking.
Yeah.
So whose side did you feel yourself leaning toward when it came to Rebecca's care?
Always Rebecca. I mean, look, it's like there's something always very magical about Jack and Rebecca and that love story. So, I think as much as you're understanding the pain of everything going on, what you want to do is get back to what's right. And, going back and reflecting on the season 4 years in, and then even looking at, larger, the 3 previous, I'm still just blown away and amazed by what this couple has been able to tap into. And then on top of that, the things that we're discovering that we didn't know about their past or their living together and whatnot.
Yeah. But we had that fight at the end with 2 of your sons. Your 2 sons were going at it. Where did you find yourself leaning toward?
I personally was heartbroken.
Yeah.
I was very heartbroken by it. I thought that was one of the, I don't want to say, better moments of the episode, but I thought what it was walking that knife's edge. You understand both sides of it. You understand both sides, both points of view, the desire to do best for mom. But on top of it, it was, it kind of broke my heart, playing Jack and knowing that Jack isn't around for any of this stuff, to see his boys at odds. It's really soul crushing, very, very soul crushing. So that whole segment of the episode where it went from Kevin finding out about the baby to or the boys fighting to Kevin finding out to the boys fight, it was just like, my God, what a massive 7 minutes of story right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Randall, saying that Dad died disappointed in you, and Kevin saying the day you were brought home was the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
How you come back from that?
Yes, Dan Fogelman, how you come back from that? Because I think those guys have a good idea of where it's going. But what I was looking at in that moment was, you can't ever tell someone their feelings are wrong, because people have their feelings and they're unique to the experience that they're living through. But what you can do in those moments is hope to understand the other side of what you're experiencing. Randall's feelings and Kevin's feelings in that moment, it's difficult, and the 2 of them have such complicated history, good and bad. Kevin's always been a pain in Randall's ass, and Randall's always been a pain in Kevin's ass, but I feel like fundamentally who those two characters are, they're good men. They're good men that want to find a commonality, but it's been a struggle for them. So I think coming back from that, I imagine would be what we're going to see in season 5.
Yeah. Okay.
It has to happen. And then, of course, there's Kate in the middle of that. Through all of that, it's the big 3. It's all 3 of them together.
Yeah. Let's dive in a little bit to season 4. What was the most challenging scene that you had to pull off? I would have to believe that one candidate would be that really tense dinner where Jack feels threatened by Randall's teacher, Mr. Lawrence. That really brought up a very naive, insecure, conflicted, and unpleasant side of Jack.
Sure. There was a lot, I think, that Jack struggled with this season. Anything from Rebecca's father and that close relationship she has, even though he said Jack isn't good enough for his daughter, to Jack wanting to, again, be the guiding light in Randall's life, but also having to accept there are a lot of, not shortcomings, just facts of life that Jack can't provide for Randall. There was that was a tough, I don't have many moments as Milo the actor playing Jack that I'm disagreeing with how he's playing a moment, but that was one of them. I'm like, Jack, don't be a jerk. Come on. What are you doing? And a lot of that I think is Jack's insecurity, because he has such a desire to be this father of of their lives, but when he understands that he can't actually be everything for them, it's a really, really difficult thing for Jack to understand and to accept. So, that was tough, but there was a line that I think it didn't make the cut, but it was Corey's character, Corey saying, you have to teach him how to be Randall. Mm-hmm. Randall's unique enough. It has nothing to do with the color of his skin or anything. It's like, let him be Randall. So. Yeah,
for sure. On the side, what was the most fun you had shooting a scene in season 4?
Oh man. I mean, all the time I'm just, and I tell Mandy all the time how lucky I am to have her, through any of the scene work that we're doing, whether it's emotional, intense, or happy and fun. We really enjoy our time together, so I can't pinpoint one, but a majority of it is always, it's with Mandy. I'm so grateful for the partnership. It was really nice too, in addition to share the screen with Michael Angarano again.
Yeah.
And have a nice Thanksgiving episode with him. So that was definitely a high point as well.
For sure. He's been a nice dimension that we've added to the show too. Do you feel like we got more in season 3 than season 4? Have you heard much about season 5 where we might be back with those brothers together?
I haven't heard much about season 5. I honestly really haven't asked a whole lot. I think that given the state of the world, the writers are working away, and I think just trying to allow them to focus on that and then see what stories we're going to tell. But, I hope we can get back to a younger Jack and Nikki, because that's satisfying for me. Roles of brothers, I think that relationship, the dynamic of that is something I always enjoy playing. Mm-hmm. So hopefully Angarano can come back and we can dance a little bit more.
That'd be great. You had another scene in season 4 where you're with the family in the present day in Randall's fantasy where you never died. What are those scenes like for you to do? You don't get to work with some of these co-stars that often. I'd imagine it's almost like a fantasy camp that you're finally getting to spend time with these people. Yeah,
I feel a bit like an outsider entirely, but everyone's welcoming. I just very much know I'm like, oh, that's their set. Even to the point where I walked on a set in full makeup, full 74-year-old aged makeup. and I was standing in the corner of the kitchen just kind of waiting for everyone to assemble and to block, and no one recognized me. Nobody knew that I was there. I think they just thought, oh, that's just, somebody's visitor on set or something. And then when they finally all turned around, and it was Glenn Steelman, one of our first ADs, and he said, "Oh my God, Milo, I didn't realize you were standing right there." Then everyone turned around. Everyone turned around and they realized it was me. It's an interesting feeling, as someone who's, that's my set and my crew as much as it's anybody else's. So it's interesting when I'm not on the inside jokes that the modern day cast has, but at the same time to play, the look between Jack and Randall when something's wrong with Rebecca, to know that you're there with cast that Jack never met, with Beth's character, with Toby's character, with all that. It's like it's a blast. It was so much fun to do it.
Yeah.
Even with the confines of makeup and a little bit of a belly and everything, it was a blast.
Very cool. Which areas of Jack's life most intrigue you at this point? What would you most like to explore? Maybe that's only been hinted at, or it's just surface scratched.
I think a lot of the stuff that interests me more these days is younger Jack. We've seen Jack be a father, and we understand his impact and how people have really taken to his advice and his way of living, and as it relates to his wife, as it relates to his kids. But I think still the formation, the creation of who he became that we first fell in love with is to be explored. We saw some of that in season 3 with Vietnam. We saw some of that last season with Jack and Rebecca and like the kind of earlier days post Vietnam. There was a period of time where the kids didn't exist. So it's, for me, like I always go back to the idea of, Jack kind of had a rough upbringing, troubles with his dad, mom a little distant, but like he did his best with his family, did the best that he could. But where did it come from inside of Jack to become this father, to have that caring nature, any of that, and I don't know if it's younger in his teen years or if it's just the moment before he actually had kids. So I don't know. I'm up and excited about anything that Dan and the writers can come up with in storylines for Jack. I'm very comfortable in playing him, and it feels incredibly instinctual at this moment.
Got it. Okay. One thing you can reveal about Mandy, working with her so closely over the years, that people might be surprised to learn about her.
Mandy has this gift of making things look pretty effortless. Mm-hmm. And you would think that it just happens. And a lot of times it does, but that woman put such hard work and dedication and discipline into understanding this character that she plays. And I learned a lot more of that, not just watching her in the scenes that we do and, seeing her notes on the script or conversations we've had in our scene work, but more so when I watch what she does as older Rebecca, and then I talk with her or speak with her about the preparation that goes into it. Like she and I, we FaceTimed not a week or two ago, and I think we were talking about just what the world and life and everything's been like, and or maybe this was like a month and a half ago, and she was talking about the research that she was doing into what present day Rebecca's experiencing. We're possibly months out from starting, but she's already working. So, the thing that people really need to understand is not only is she incredibly naturally talented, but she puts her work in, and that's always it's always a very welcome thing someone like me who gets to benefit from all the time and attention and focus that she puts into her work. I'm grateful.
Right on. We've got time for one last question, and it's thinking about This Is Us, as a limited number of seasons left. We're getting closer to the end. It's time to talk about your dream scene. This could be an actor that you don't work with that often, that you'd like some more scenes with. It could be a guest star you can bring on of your choosing. It could be a fantasy sequence. The floor is yours. What do you want to see?
I mean, where do I start, Dan? I really wish Jack would have had more time with William. Those are always bittersweet moments that, they're tiny little things that I get to share with Ron Cephas Jones or with Jermel Nakia. And those are things that I think I would have personally loved to experience more. Gosh, I mean, more time with, the guys that Jack spent time with when he was in Vietnam. But I think that's only like a finite amount of story that we can really get what we need that relates to the present day. And also even more with his father. I think the small glimpses we've seen with Stanley, with Pete Arati, it gives us enough to understand where he comes from. It gives us enough to understand what he was up against and why he took the turn to be the father that he was and the husband that he was. But I'm always craving more, especially when you see those small glimpses of the day Nikki was born and Stanley was not the Stanley that we knew. So, that dynamic of fathers and sons and brothers and close friends and even the fathers that never knew each other. Those are some dreams I'd love to have.
That's cool. We'll put them all on the wish list. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And look
Absolutely.
forward to you in season 5, and congrats on season 4.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, let's give a virtual welcome to Mandy Moore, who plays the matriarch of this whole operation, Rebecca. How are you, Mandy?
Hi, I'm all right. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Season 4. There's a very critical one for Rebecca as she began her long battle with Alzheimer's. What was your reaction when creator Dan Fogelman told you that this is where her arc was headed?
As you are well aware, covering the show for a couple of years now, Dan and our writers are incredible about keeping us in the loop in terms of what's happening with our characters. And also it's important, especially for those of us that sort of jump around in time more, to obviously know sort of as much of the full breadth of what's happening. So I knew that we were sort of getting to the point in the arc of the series where this was going to be addressed. Doesn't make it any less challenging or incredibly emotional. But I think it was halfway through this season. I remember signs were starting to sort of point to, what we've come to learn as, more of the typical signs of someone that might be suffering from symptoms of mild cognitive impairment. And sure enough, I flagged Isaac and Elizabeth, our showrunners, and I was like, wait, is this what's happening? Is this sort of where we're starting? And they're like, yes, correct. So it's, again, it doesn't make it any less emotional to sort of start to wrap your head around that storyline. But I'm glad that we're telling it, and we're telling it sort of in typical This Is Us terms, which I think means that we're handling it with a lot of grace and responsibly.
When you were doing your research on this, what was probably the biggest thing that you learned that informed your performance this season? I think when taking on a role like this with a character that is sort of venturing down this particular journey, dementia and Alzheimer's affects so many millions of men and women across the country, and obviously their families, many of which are their caregivers. So
I somehow haven't had a personal connection to Alzheimer's or dementia, so I was very nervous about making sure that I handled this correctly and responsibly, and I wanted to do all the research possible. So I really dove in pretty deep, and I listened to podcasts, I watched documentaries, I read books, and I spoke to a couple of neurologists as well, because again, like, the details really matter, and so many people. We're lucky to sort of have this wide swath of people that watch our show, and I'm sure many people recognize this in their own families. This particular story is a mirror for them. So I wanted to make sure that, like, all the details were correct. And for the episode where Rebecca is going to the neurologist to sort of begin her trek getting diagnosed, we had a neurologist on set who was helping us, like, administer the test, and, like, actually drew the clock for me, and, like, helped us figure out, like, spatially what would be going on. But to answer your question, the thing I found most helpful was trying to find some first person account of what it sort of feels like to be in the midst of this intense battle with Alzheimer's. And I found this man by the name of Greg O'Brien, who's an author and a journalist in Massachusetts. And he wrote this book called On Pluto. And he has a podcast, and he's just written all kinds of, like, incredible firsthand accounts of what it's like to sort of grapple with this disease. And that, to me, was beyond anything the most helpful. I sort of, like, carried his book around as sort of a de facto Bible while we were shooting a lot of this season, because it gave such a rich illustrative point of reference as to what someone's going through in such a, like, dynamic way that I don't think I was able to get just from reading, like, research papers.
That makes sense. So Rebecca makes this decision at first to reject the clinical trial at Washington University before being guilted by Randall. Does the son have the right to use all means necessary when it comes to the health of his mother? Or is this still her decision and he overstepped his boundaries? I'm sure you guys talked a lot about that. I'd love to know where your head is at.
I kind of still fall on both sides of the argument of the divide. I mean, I can absolutely understand, a son who lost his biological father, his adoptive father, and now has the opportunity to do whatever it takes to care for his mom. He's going to put it all on the line. And that entails, guilting her in using this sort of secret that's been outed that I think is one of the more detrimental, burdens on their relationship, and something that's really obviously this has been a total source of shame and guilt for Rebecca for pretty much the entirety of her children's life. So I still can understand where he's coming from. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the means by which he got Rebecca to agree to this. But then on the other hand, it's like, I could also understand, like, this is a woman who is fully understanding of, the resources that are out there, and has made this decision with a lot of information at her fingertips, that she, instead of, pressing forward, being a part of some sort of clinical trial, or really doing anything that feels like, I don't know, like too much, I guess. She really wants to spend this time with her family. And I feel like the last, like, 2 seasons, we've really seen so much repair with her children, and this season included, that I think she really wants to enjoy the fruits of her labor, of, like, finally kind of getting on the same page with Kate and with Kevin. Things have, always been pretty great with Randall, but now that she lives in California and she has her grandchild there, and potentially, obviously more grandchildren in the future, I think she really didn't take this decision lightly. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds in season 5.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned you could see both sides. Speaking of both sides, there was a fight with Kevin and Randall that ended the season. It was vicious. It was quiet, but it was deadly. Each barb was, like, it was precisely, designed to just impact, in the biggest way. So my question to you is that when you were watching that on the sidelines, were you like, That's the one that crossed the line. I'm sorry, you're both my children, but this one crossed the line. Where did you land on that?
Again, both sides. It was like they both said stuff that, again, you will be able to forgive but never forget. I mean, Kevin says that the worst day of his life was when, we brought him home from the hospital and he was a part of our family. And then when Randall tells Kevin that, dad died ashamed of you. I mean, those are, like you said, designed to sort of make maximum impact and like push every button and every bruise inside both of them. It's wild. But again, I think like if we hearken back to mid-season and we sort of see this divide between Kevin and Randall and the fact that, during that scene at the cabin, which we now understand was sort of a flash forward, which would be kind of where we find ourselves at the beginning of season 5 with the children's birthday, that they're no longer speaking, they're no longer in each other's lives in any capacity. And it's pretty easy to understand why now that we've seen the fight.
Got it. How many takes did you ruin by running onto the set that day when they were shooting and saying, boys?
Yeah. I was not there for that particular scene being filmed, but I would have stopped that fight. I would have broken up that fight.
I know you would have.
I don't want to see my children like come to blows like that. It's no mother wants to see that.
For sure. When you look back at all 18 episodes of season 4, what was the most challenging scene you had to pull off?
I would say one of the more challenging scenes was the New York episode. We actually shot a couple of days in New York, and I took a very early morning flight to New York because I had a musical performance the night before. I landed and got to the hotel, went straight into hair and makeup, and then went right over to the Met where we were shooting, which was the coolest experience ever. They actually shut down the museum for us to be able to film. So you can imagine like walking through the Met in New York City pre-pandemic, right before the city shut down and the world shut down, and having carte blanche to sort of just meander around this empty monolith of a museum. But I had to go into this like 4.5-page monologue. And I remember I was sitting on the plane, like just going over it and over it and over it in my head. And usually like, memorization is not something that is too terribly difficult for me, but also knowing like we only had a certain amount of time to film in the Met and that we were sort of jumping right into it and then had to like move on to other scenes. I felt that pressure of trying to nail it. And it's weird, you're in a new environment, a new city, a totally new crew. I got to look at the faces of Justin and Sterling, obviously, while we were shooting it. But, without getting emotional about it, it's like watching this woman sort of come to terms with where her life is and this train that's coming that she's unable to stop, which is, this diagnosis that she has. Her finally like taking ownership in the choices that she's making and her own life and her own happiness. It's so complicated. It's so complex. And like this sense of authority that she has when she sort of tells Randall, I'm not going to do that clinical trial. Like I've made this choice for myself. Like when I picture the next few years of my life, I don't know what it looks like necessarily, but I know that I want to be surrounded by my family is really bold and brave. And I feel like it's a color we haven't necessarily seen of Rebecca, especially at this phase of her life. So all of that was just, trying to get it right was something I was, nervous about and really conscious of. So that was one of the more challenging things. And not like my grief as Mandy, as the human, for Rebecca and the situation she finds herself in is immense. Like I can get emotional just thinking about it, what this path that this woman is about to, venture down on with her family. But I have to keep that to myself. So it's like a really weird balance of like, oh, my heart is broken for her as Mandy, but I can't show that as Rebecca because her heart's not broken. Like she's so stoic and so strong. There's such like resolve in the choices that she's making and how she feels about her life at this point that I can't let that color anything.
Right. Okay. Now I wanted to ask you your favorite scene from season 4.
Oh man.
What was the most fun to shoot?
Oh, there's so much that's so hard. Gosh, I love any time we can all be together. That's my most favorite. Like the majority of the cast, I would say, that's really fun. So that's tough. But also, you know what I had a lot of fun doing? Because I am a gigantic Joni Mitchell fan. The entire episode, where I sort of go on this dual adventure with Jack in the 70s during our road trip to California to find Joni Mitchell and Graham Nash's house. And then simultaneously in the present day, Kevin takes me on this journey to go find the house that I never found with Jack. It was really beautiful. Like I love Justin Hartley so much. I love working with him. And I loved that experience of making that episode. Also, his directorial debut, directing the Hell of a Week Part 3, where it was Chrissy and we got to, spend a couple of days at this blind retreat with him at the helm as director. Also was like one for the books, a memory that, out of this entire experience of the series, one that I'll definitely remember.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Joni Mitchell episode, because I thought that was great. And what was fun and interesting to watch, and actually kind of poignant, was when she's listening to the music, in the record store, and the activation that she feels and the transfer, that she's transported to another world. It's like you see Rebecca at her sharpest and her most vivid. And that got me thinking about, for treatments, music therapy is obviously a big thing. And I was wondering if that's something that you've all talked about, that Rebecca seems to respond so well. She would seem like an ideal candidate for something like that.
It's not something that I've had a conversation with the writers about, but you know them. I'm sure this has definitely crossed their mind for sure. And I agree with you. I think Rebecca would be an ideal candidate for music therapy. I think regardless, music is such a through line in her life. And I think she can recognize the power and potential it has to be, incredibly healing.
Yeah. Wanted to ask you, what's one thing you can reveal about working with Milo Ventimiglia that people would be surprised to learn? You share the most scenes with him. You know the most.
I know the most.
Yeah.
God, what do people not know about Milo? I feel like I've revealed everything about him. I mean, he's a complex gentleman. What is something that people don't know? I mean, he is such a gentleman. He is the guy, I've said this before, I guess to a certain degree, but he knows everybody. He knows everybody's job. He knows everybody's name. He walks on stage, on set every day and shakes everyone's hand. He's just incredibly thorough and super professional in that sense, but also he really is sort of the father, the patriarch of the family. He knows everything that's going on. If you're like, hey, I heard there was maybe a scheduled I'm going to talk to Milo, because Milo probably knows. He just for some reason is able to put his feelers out, and either people come to him or he goes to them. But seriously, whenever I have a question about something, I'm like, I bet Milo has the answer to that. I don't know. There's something about him, and the fact that he's been doing this for such a long time too. He's super pro, and I feel so lucky to be his partner in this. And in many ways, we really do feel like mom and dad.
I like that. It seems very on brand.
On brand.
Let me get you out on this. We're running out of seasons of This Is Us. It's time to ask you your dream scene that you'd love to do before the show ends. It could be working with an actor you don't get to work with that often. It could be a guest star you'd love to bring on. It could just be a fun fantasy sequence. Whatever you think. Would love to hear what your thoughts are.
I mean, considering that so many of us are musical on This Is Us, can't we have some sort of musical, not a musical episode, because that feels a little off brand, but I don't know, some sort of musical number. Maybe it's a Rebecca fantasy where she just in the recesses of her brain and memory, has this vision of the family sort of gathered and everybody's because Sterling can sing, Susan can sing. I feel like everybody can carry a tune on the show. Obviously Chrissy and Sully and John Huertas. I don't know. There's something I want to just put that out in the ether. Maybe there's some sort of musical fantasy situation.
All right, it's out there now for people to write into you and to tweet about. So hashtag musical moment. And all right, well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and congrats again on season 4.
Thank you very much.
Let's welcome to the program a man who is much more than the sum of his Emmys. He's got 2 for the record. Sterling K. Brown, who plays Randall Pierson, the good son of This Is Us, but maybe not quite as good at the end of last season. We'll get into that. Thanks for joining us, Sterling. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Dan. How are you?
Doing well. All right, so when we last saw you on the screen, you and Justin Hartley weren't seeing eye to eye. It was more like eye for an eye. What was it like to be in the throes of that absolutely brutal fight where things were said that are going to be very hard to take back?
It's uncomfortable. I mean, it's easy and it's uncomfortable. It's easy in that Sterling and Justin have a true love and appreciation for working with one another. He's one of my favorite people to play with on the show. Uncomfortable in seeing these brothers sort of at each other's throats. They both have their mother's best interest at heart and both have a very specific way of which they think they should proceed in order to protect her interests and her health. And they're at odds, and it's uncomfortable, and there's going to be friction, and things were said, like you said, that cannot be unsaid. So the pathway to healing is going to be an arduous one, but in the end, I have faith.
I like the faith. Was the fact that everything was said in that calm, measured voice just made it sting that much more, as if, you can't easily write that off as a heat of the moment thing?
I would say so. And when you measure it out like that, it's like, no, I mean what I'm saying. This isn't the heat of the moment. I've thought about it, I've contemplated it, and then I've chosen to actually articulate it in a way that you can understand it. So yeah, that if it had just been flippant, it could have been like, we said things, da-da-da. But it stung a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Can we say that this fight in a lot of ways was decades in the making?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at them throughout the history of their relationship, and they're up and down and up and down. And Kev comes through for Randall in such huge and wonderful ways as a young man. And then he also just mercilessly ridicules him at the same time. So the nature of their relationship is crests and troughs. And I think both of them, since the death of their father, have sort of been jockeying in their own way for who is now the man of this family. And I think Randall has occupied that space for a long time. I think him leaving his job and not having the same sort of financial security that he once had, moving to Philadelphia with his family, has put him in a different position, as well as Kevin's ascendancy in his own career, film-wise. And so now being in a position where he can take care of and wants to take care of family. It's, this was a long time coming.
Yeah. It is a true fact that you and Justin Hartley are very tight. What does that mean for shooting a scene like that? Was that a huge help, where you're going to be at each other's throats, but you have such, unspoken, bond there? Exactly, how to work each other. And can you walk us through a little bit of that dynamic, how that helped you in that scene?
Yeah, there's complete and total faith and trust, and recognizing that whatever has to be done isn't taken personally once the cameras stop rolling, right? So you have the freedom to go as hard as you need to when action is called, knowing that when it's over, you can still get a hug, right? So it wasn't difficult like that. Like, it was a tense sort of shooting. And it's interesting too, because the scene started off much more bombastic. And then we took a look at the scene along with Ken and Dan and said, you know what? If we actually hone this in a little bit, the hurt will be worse. To which Fogelman said, I called Fogelman after Moonshadow at the end of season 1. And I was like, dude, are you sure you want to end the season like this? This is hard. This is difficult. It's like sometimes you have to go through difficult things in order to earn the joy that comes later in the show. And he goes, you remember when you called me? I said, yeah. He goes, this is way worse, dude. Yeah, it's Randall. Randall's had fights with Beth. He's now having fights with his brother. I don't know who else he's going to fight with throughout the course of the show, but hopefully not too many.
Right. My understanding was, I heard that the crew and staff was a little divided as those final few episodes about, Team Randall versus Team Kevin. What did you hear on the set? And it was as if there's an anecdote you can share about that it was sort of a set, like you need to choose a side maybe.
Yeah, what's interesting? So I've been on two sides of these Team Randall sorts of things. Team Randall, Team Beth, Team Randall, Team Kevin. And what I found, first of all, online, Twitter, in particular, like folks are pretty strongly Team Kevin. And I'm not mad at that. I think that Randall at the end of, what is it? Is it 17 or 16 where he makes the phone call to his mom and asks her to go into the clinical trial. While his heart is in the right place and he wants to see his mother live the longest and most fruitful life possible, it was unquestionably manipulative, right? And it was self-serving in that he wants his mother to be around as long as possible. But also he thinks the family will want his mother around as long as possible, right? So like once that phone call, once I read it in the script, I was like, oh boy, this is like that moment when he goes, can we put a pin in it? When he's talking to Beth about whether or not she wants to go into her dance career. So I knew it was going to be problematic, and rightfully so. People should have problems with an act that's deliberately manipulative. So I myself am probably even Team Kevin, because there's every once in a while these things happen where Sterling looks at Randall and is like, come on, man, why are you doing that, right? I understand it. I don't judge it. As far as like the crew and the cast and everybody, I think most of the cast was Team Kevin as well, to be honest. Like I would talk to Chrissy and she's like, ooh, Sterl, I can't believe you did that, right? And even Mandy was like, yeah, that's a tough one. So yeah, I get it.
Well, you went right to my next question, which are his intentions are undeniably pure, but his methods are suspect in terms of getting Rebecca to agree to go to St. Louis for these clinical trials. So in the end, how much of a penalty flag do we throw on Randall, would you say?
I think you have to recognize his intentions.
Yeah.
I think you have to recognize that he's someone who lives with anxiety and he takes personal responsibility for everything. For everything. And if he does not do his absolute best to say, I did everything I could to make sure that mom lived the healthiest, longest, most fruitful life possible, he will carry that with him. And he can't bear that. He doesn't know how to just let things go. He's learning, right? There's times in which he's better, and then there's times in which everything just feels like it's his responsibility and he doesn't know how to shake it. So I have deep empathy. Right? Because I know people who live with anxiety and I know people who carry burdens with them, whether they should be carrying those burdens or not.
Okay.
So I ask people to be gentle. I understand if they are upset. I do. And it's justifiable. Just be upset as gently as possible.
A fair plea, I think. Randall was under fire and tested a lot this season. What was the most challenging scene you had to pull off in season 4? I'm wondering if it involved his collapse leading into therapy, some of the therapy itself, or was it the fight?
It wasn't the fight. The fight was, I'll say easy in quotation marks, but like I understood that. Therapy is difficult on two levels because Randall was so guarded when he first initially went into the process. And I've been doing therapy for a long time. So I had to remember what it was like when I first started sharing the most personal aspects of your life with someone who's a complete stranger and being comfortable with that. I want to say that Pamela was absolutely wonderful to play with. She kept things, she does like Justin and I do and Sully, like where you have these heavy scenes to do and to cut the tension, you just make people laugh as hard as possible. She's a very, very funny woman and she cut the tension delightfully so. But there was, I would even say aspects of Randall 2.0, which what was tough about it is that Randall is such an intensely feeling human being that to a certain extent, he was cut off from his emotions as a way to preserve himself in that 2.0 version. And like, even in the depicting of it, I was like, oh, people aren't going to like this, right? Because there's a wall that he's put up between him and his family, right? That we're unaccustomed to seeing. So like, I can even remember when the box of William's belongings, and just the idea that this box of stuff, he has no personal connection to, and he dropped it in the trash. Like, there's two things that happen to me simultaneously. There's me performing as the actor, and then there's me observing the actor as an audience member. And as an audience member, I was like, shit, that's, whew. So 2.0 was interesting.
Okay. And on the flip side, what was the most fun you had shooting a scene in season 4, would you say?
Oh boy, let's see. It's usually something easy to point to. And no, there is something. I would say the golf episode was really enjoyable. Like, it was sort of meta in a couple of ways. Like, I have a very problematic relationship with the game of golf because I'd never taken a lesson. But I had to take lessons to shoot the episode. And then I was actually pretty damn good, right? So the whole time we're shooting, I'm just hitting balls up and down the green the whole time. And they're like, Brown, you're pretty good at this thing. And I'm like, I know, this is crazy, right? So actually be able to successfully do it on camera, like a well-hit golf. Do you golf?
I don't. So I'm impressed just what you're doing already, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like, when you hit the ball right, you can then hit the ball poorly 8-10 times in a row, but you're chasing the high of that perfectly hit ball. And so to see the past storyline play out and how wonderful Lonnie and Milo were with one another in that, in terms of addressing the intricacies of race, the expectations that people have of you, of a Black man on a golf course, and having to learn how to play this game so you can navigate the world in a mainstream society. And then seeing him be able to utilize his skills to get what he wants in a way in which we didn't anticipate, that touched me. It touched me, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Cool. What is one thing you can reveal about working with Susan that people would be surprised to know?
Well, if you follow her on Instagram, you already know that she's got bars. She can spit hot fire when it comes to emceeing. So that's something that everybody knows who follows her on Instagram. She's very quiet, but not like a dormouse or anything like that. She's just a pretty subdued, chill woman who has a wicked sense of humor. Like, she probably watches more comedy than anything else and has a desire to do, like, I can see her doing romantic comedies, buddy comedies, and making people laugh really hard. Like, if you ever saw her back in the day on FX's, Louie, she's very funny on that. And so I think people forget how awesome a sense of humor she has because she's so sort of subdued, but underneath, wickedly funny.
Cool. All right, finally, we're running out of seasons of This Is Us. We're going to talk about your dream scene. So we've got the actor that you've barely shared scenes with that you'd love another shot with. We're talking about a guest star you can bring on, budget be damned. And, or could just be, we've seen Randall with the mushroom smoothie. We've seen some weird fantasy sequences with him. So maybe you have something percolating in the back of that head.
It's always nice to have scenes with Milo because they only happen like once a season when we can find a plausible sort of scenario for it to work in, right? So that's always a joy. Love my dad. It would be crazy to have like a scene. I don't know why this Bryan Cranston just came to mind. I don't know if Walter White could find his way into the Pierson universe. That would be something pretty incredible. My biggest acting crush is probably Robert Downey Jr.
Okay.
Jr. I don't think has ever done a television show. You probably know better than I do. Has he ever even been?
Probably McBeal.
McBeal! Oh, yes!
Right.
That's right. So, it could be possible. Girls, I'm watching a lot of The Good Fight right now. I'm loving Delroy and everything that he does on that show. Baranski is absolutely wonderful. I hope they're able to finish their season in a way that's satisfying to its viewers, because they had to stop like on 407. It's really, really good. So that's a few. If dream beyond dreams,
Right.
beyond dreams, if I was somehow related to Denzel Washington,
Wow.
and we had a chance to have the epic scene of all scenes, I could then ascend to heaven a happy man.
That would be amazing. Okay, we're going to put that out in the universe. It's here.
There it is.
It's on a stream. It has to happen. From your lips to reality. Sterling, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us, and congrats on season 4.
It's my pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me.
All right, up next is Chrissy Metz, who stars as Kate Pierson, 1/3 of the big 3 and 3/3 of a very impressive singer. Chrissy, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? It's nice to see you. It's been a long time.
I know, it's been a while, so let's get into it. Season 4, taking charge of her family and confronting her husband that he was not pulling his weight with their son proved to be a very pivotal moment for Kate, obviously in season 4. For you, though, what was the most challenging moment to pull off in season 4?
Wow. You know, that of course was definitely challenging, because anytime you push against something that you could potentially lose, it's scary. And so when she was pushing back and saying like, this isn't enough for me, and you've got to show up for our son, there's a chance that he wasn't going to be able to pull his own weight, and who knows? And I think because she has this sort of idea in the back of her head that like her father's not there, like maybe another man will leave her as well. And whether it's, you know, self-induced or that she created or contributed to that, again, I think that was something that was really difficult, to play it in a way that she was strong enough, but also trying to be sympathetic enough. But then I think she just was like, look, you got to figure this out. And we all need that, I think, in any kind of relationship, someone to kind of take the reins. But that was pretty challenging. But also all the stuff with Rebecca. So grateful to play with Mandy, and all of the unveiling of what she was really contending with, or what Rebecca really is going through. And especially because as soon as they're starting to kind of find their footing as far as a mother-daughter goes in a positive way, she feels like she's losing her. So it was really difficult. It was, you know, it's, I know a lot of people have reached out and talked about similar experiences, and, you know, it's heartbreaking. So those two were definitely challenging.
Got it. There was a big moment at the end of the season. Kate and Toby breathe deeply and commit to adopting a second child. Just pulling out of the parking lot, so not a ton of time to reflect on this. Are they in over their heads a little bit?
Sure.
Always.
Well, I think to be human is you feel like you're always in over your head. And I've heard so many people numerous times say, like, you're never really ready for a child. Like, you get ready. And my sister just had her 4th baby, and she always says that to me. She's like, you can't ever get ready. Like, you just have to like sort of take the plunge, and then, you know, hopefully you figure it out. But yeah, I mean, they're very eager to have that, but I think it's coming from a good place. I don't know where it's going to sort of evolve or unravel, I should say, because it's going to be challenging for sure. But I think it's lovely that they both want it, and that there's best intentions there.
Yeah. Well, adoption means something really special on the show. Kate obviously has family members with experience in this area, with Rebecca and Randall. Based on what little you know, or your great speculative brain, how might this help matters and or complicate them, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, complicate in the way of you don't ever know when you adopt, you know, what personality or how the dynamics are going to shift and change. And at what age are they going to adopt? So like all of those factors are huge in adoption. And then of course still making sure that Jack, as the sweet little baby, is taken care of too. So there's all of those things at play. And then I think it could really, I think Kate, well, and Toby really could sympathize with Randall, in a different way, and understand, we can sympathize with people, but until we've sort of experienced it ourselves, we don't really get it. So, and even with Rebecca as well, as a mom with a child who is being adopted. So yeah, I mean, a lot. There's a lot to unpack.
A lot.
There will be a lot.
Back at those 18 episodes of season 4, what was your favorite scene to film? Maybe the scene you had the most fun doing. Maybe it was something unexpected.
Oh, wow. The most fun. I mean, it was really fun for Mandy and I to sing Ironic in the karaoke scene, especially because we knew what was happening, all the subtext and everything that was going on. But it was just really, really sweet and really special. I really enjoyed that scene. Even the pool scene was really tender, when we figured out how Kate was nicknamed Bug. I don't know. It's so hard to choose, though. That's a tricky one.
I mean, the Kate-Rebecca duet was certainly something that fans were asking for. Rounding off to the nearest, 1,000, how many times did you hear that over the years? When is that happening?
Oh, a lot. I mean, every interview. Essentially every interview. When is it going to happen? Are you guys going to sing? Is Kate going to sing? Are Rebecca and Kate going to ever do a concert? So karaoke was the ticket. So.
Yeah. And Mandy said, and I'll get to this question later about your dream scene that you'd love to do. She would love to see not a musical episode, but something where everyone kind of joins in the musical situation there of some sort. Any thoughts on that?
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I think that the Piersons and Toby included, everyone is sort of a fan of music. So, and Dan and the writers are so creative. I'm sure there's a really cool way of doing that, because I don't know if you remember a couple seasons ago when the Christmas, when they kind of hang around the piano and sing, Christmas songs, that stuff is special. So I'm sure there's a way we could do it. It would be really fun.
I think so, yeah. Now, you have a label deal, and the song you sang in the film Breakthrough earned an Oscar nomination, which, of course, begs the question, can we expect more musical moments with you next season, leading into that?
Oh, I hope. I'm always up for it, that's for sure. It's always a challenge, and it's very fun. And I also like to see, the Rebecca, Kate, and then little Jack as an adult, and his movement and his musical journey. So yeah, I don't know yet. But I'd love to.
Okay. What is one thing that you can reveal about working with Chris Sullivan that people may not know and they would be surprised to learn?
Maybe not surprised, but he is so calm. He's cool, collected. But he literally is one of the funniest guys I know. He's just very aware and in tune. And maybe people already know that. If you know him, I think you do. But yeah, he's very, very funny, obviously, but he has this really beautiful, deep side.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you think about Kate and shaping this character and creating it, what was maybe an unlikely influence on what we see on the screen? Maybe you were drawing from a place that people would be surprised to know about.
I don't know if I've mentioned this, a while ago, but I didn't have a great connection with my father growing up. And so anytime the Jack and Kate stuff comes up, it's about the longing or the lack of that relationship. So it's really bittersweet. And cathartic as well for me, because there's some sort of the universe is oh, well, you can still experience it even if it's not personally in your own life. So, yeah, I mean, that's something I didn't even realize it was going to sort of play itself out, but it has. So.
Great. When you think about the scenes, not just over the last, over season 4, but over all 4 seasons, what is a scene that maybe you would consider maybe you're proudest of? A scene that it would be worth us going back and looking at again and reevaluating. So what's that moment? If you could make, if you get one clip, the Chrissy clip, what are you putting on that reel?
Wow. Whoa. I mean, the ICU stuff, when Jack was in the ICU comes to mind. And then, I mean, one of my favorite scenes will always be that initial potential breakup with Kate and Toby at the restaurant before Thanksgiving. To sit in a public place and have that like very, very deep, serious conversation. It's probably one of my favorite moments, if I could even choose one. It's weird, but yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned to you that Mandy was talking about a dream scene that she'd love to see. It's time for your choice. So this could be an actor who you don't work with much on the show that you'd love a scene with. Could be a guest star you'd love to bring in. Chris Sullivan talked about the Toby Damon, Matt Damon scene that we all need to see. That could be pretty great. It could just be a fantasy sequence. We've seen Kate, obviously the cool moment where we see old Jack at her wedding. So, where does your head go?
I mean, my head always goes to Allison Janney because I just love her so much.
Yeah.
I just love her. But like, I mean, if we're thinking crazy big, I'm like, Judi Dench? I'm just like selfishly asking because I would just want to work with her and be in her presence. Like they haven't met Toby's mom.
I love that. Okay.
We haven't seen, so possibilities are endless, but I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint, a particular storyline or something, but yeah.
Yeah. If Judi played, a relative, let's talk about Allison Janney because she's pretty fantastic and versatile. What would you love to see Allison? And obviously you'd have to be in that scene, of course.
Yeah. I mean, she might even be great as Toby's mom. Yep. She is so versatile and just, I think she has that bite, and from what we know of Toby's mom, but I think it'd be interesting, that dynamic, like Kate and Toby's mom, like what does that look like? Because that is so important in a marriage and a relationship. So it would be interesting. Just putting it out there.
I think that's all we can do.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I would see a scene where an episode where Kate, it's just smooth sailing. Her stress levels are low. She gets to hang out a little bit, enjoy family time. I think she's been through a lot, and I think she's earned that,
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Everybody needs a little reprieve.
Yeah. It may not be the most exciting episode, but I think it's like karmically deserved, I would say.
Oh, yeah. I think so too.
Yeah. We have to run, but thank you so much, Chrissy, for taking the time to talk with us.
Of course.
Again on season 4.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You too. So let's welcome to the conversation Justin Hartley, who plays .333 of the Big Three. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so season 4. Did anything happen? Let's see. Oh, wait, that's right. There was this devastating fight at the end of the season between Kevin and Randall over Rebecca's care, but so much more, too. What was it like to have those two air out decades of pent-up tension on that front yard?
Look, I mean, that was tough. I have personally and selfishly become a big fan of Kevin and Randall's reconciliation and their sort of their relationship and their bond and their sort of brotherly bond and being there for each other. So when I saw that, I was a little deflated and a little sad because I feel like they've come so far, especially from where we found them, and they've both kind of managed to, in a way, kind of accept who the other person is. And I think like there's been a mutual respect that has sort of happened over the years. And then you see that and it's just, that's a devastator. So So there's that, but then also as an actor, selfishly, I was like licking my chops. I mean, the idea of doing what is essentially kind of like a oneer, half of an act with Sterling and with Kate, and have it kind of like be this one big scene was daunting, but also something that I was looking forward to. And look, it creates good drama, right? Going forward, everybody's wondering, including me, how do you come back from that? How do you reconcile? If you do reconcile, how does it look different? Because you can't really take those words back. You say things like that, and there's truth behind it, and that's the tough thing. Is everything that they said was true?
Yeah.
So it's a tough one.
That's a great point. To me, it was also just how vicious everything was without voices being raised. It was like everything seemed like bioengineered to penetrate deeper.
Well, the thing, right? I mean, if you're out of control and you're screaming and shouting, and I mean, in real life too, you see somebody screaming and shouting. At least I know for me, I think that person looks like crazy. I was like, oh, you're nuts. You're out of control, and you're not in control of your own body. But when someone is like methodical and picking you apart, or saying this is my issue, and it's not fun to listen to, and it's cool, calm, collected, and quiet, there's a lot more. It resonates a lot more, I think. And so that's where the pain came from, right? It was like, this was thought out. This has been sitting there, and all I'm doing is just sort of recognizing it. I'm not out of control at all. So it was intense.
Yeah, you and I talked about this a while ago, a month or two ago, about that scene and kind of deconstructing it. But what do you think was the death blow moment? Is there a line that's kind of haunts you still from either side, where you kind of can't get it out of your head and you just say, you know what, that one fully crossed the line? You don't come back from something like that.
I don't know about the not coming back from as much as I think it's not coming back to the same place. Coming back from it, but I think it's like a chemical change. I think things will never be exactly the way that they were. And I think it had to do with, Randall saying to Kevin, you're not chasing Dad, you're chasing me, you're chasing my shadow. He was disappointed in you, and he died disappointed in you. And the truth of that is what hurts. And then Kevin, equally can I say dick? I don't know if I can say that. Equally a jerk. Says the worst day of my life was when they brought you home.
That was it.
And he repeats it.
Yeah.
So I don't know which one is worse. I think they're both sort of they're in the toilet together.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of describing it. Talk a little bit about what the set was like in terms of while you guys were filming those few weeks of that fracture leading up to that fight and culminating with the fight. Was the set pretty evenly divided on, there was a team Randall and team Kevin, people had their own thoughts, crew members on who was in the right here?
That's a good question. I never, Dan, that's a great question. I never asked that question intentionally because I didn't want to be influenced by what other people thought. And it was almost like I felt like that would be like going to therapy and kind of solving the problem. And I needed to experience that. So I didn't want to know, because I look at things from Kevin's perspective, and I think Kevin, I protect him and I love him and I take care of him, and everything else I don't worry about. We have other talented actors that are capable of doing all of that for themselves. So I just felt like if I found out before I had to do this that everyone thought that my character was out of line, that might influence my performance. And so I didn't, and I don't know if it would have or not, but I wasn't willing to take the chance. And so I have no idea. I think, I like to think that it's probably 50-50, and I think that's what Dan does, and that's good drama and going forward. And I like to think that probably most people are disappointed in both of them for doing that, for not protecting each other and themselves and their relationship and this thing that they've built over the course of the last 4 years. And we've seen how far they've come in a good way. And then just sort of rip it down in one conversation is a little adolescent, but this is life, right? This is what people do.
Mm-hmm. Your performance in that scene, the fight scene, was obviously fantastic. But Kevin had a fair amount of challenges in his first year of sobriety. What was the most challenging scene that you had to pull off in season 4, whether it was that moment or there's a lot of others you could choose from too?
Yeah, gosh. You know, a tough one for me was I had an kind of an issue with myself when we were filming the scene where Kevin is kneeling down in front of his ex-wife's mother's grave.
Yeah.
And his ex-mother-in-law's grave, and kind of explaining all of his shortcomings and apologizing for what he did to her daughter, essentially, and for mucking that up twice. For me, that was tough because I was having a problem just as an actor, as a person holding it together, because I didn't want it to be this blubbering mess. And I had a really great director and a really great crew behind me that sort of helped me through that. And that's sort of the theme of our show. I think we really are family. It's an incredible place to work. So that was tough for me. And then, yeah, that last scene, oddly enough, it wasn't that it wasn't difficult, because the show is difficult. All of it is difficult, but it just makes sense. And so, that makes it a little bit easier. You really can dive into these characters and understand exactly what their point of view is and get behind it, and then just do your job. And then working with Alex and driving around in that car, that whole episode with her was also a challenge, just because I just love working with her, and I just think she's a fantastic actress. And I knew that we had her for, a little bit of time, and just, I would have liked to have had more time with that story, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen in the future.
Well, I think it was tough for fans too to get a taste of you guys back together, and there are a lot of people that are heavily invested in that relationship, and to see it, them connecting again, and just that chemistry and that bond they have.
Yeah, and then I also became a hall pass for Sophia Bush, which was a rough year for Kevin.
Rough year. Let's look at your favorite scene to film in season 4. What do you have the most fun doing?
Oh gosh. Oh, is it demented to say the finale, the last scene? I mean, I think that what was going on in Kevin's head regarding his mom and her health, and how Randall was approaching that and kind of manipulating it and to get what he wanted, even though she was clear about what she wanted, and just that kind of betrayal from your brother, addressing it, and then having it go all the way back to when they were kids, and then saying some just nasty stuff that is, you can't, like I said, you can't take it back. You're gonna have to figure out how to go forward from there. Hopefully there will be an apology in there. I don't know how that will go. And then on top of all of that, as if that, is not enough for one person to deal with, he comes in and finds out that this woman that he had a sort of one-night fling with is now pregnant and with twins. And he just, I think that was an amazing sort of thing to have happened. That was like someone coming in and saying talk about highs and lows and mediums, and shock and surprise, and horrifying moments, but also life-changing moments. And in a matter of 2 minutes, one of the most important human beings in your life exits your life for all intents and purposes for good. And then within a minute, you get told that the most important thing that will ever happen to you is happening to you. And you get an influx of new people in your life, people that you've never met, and you're going to be a dad. So that was like, spinning as an actor. So that was fun, though. That was good. I was exhausted. I slept well that night.
I bet.
Yeah.
Short answer, is Kevin ready for this massive load of responsibility that he's pledged to take on?
Yeah.
He's ready.
We'll see. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You and Sterling have a very special friendship. It's a mutual love in there for sure. What's one thing you can reveal about working with Sterling K. Brown that people would be surprised to know?
I don't know if it's a surprise anymore, just because he's become such a household name, and I think people know this about him now. But his he plays a character that is riddled with anxiety, and he's very good at what he does and very serious about his craft, for sure. Also, we laugh constantly, and he is a goofball and a half, and a total like jokester and a storyteller. And I mean, you'll see him do something and it's like really serious and kind of, sometimes it's depressing and it's intense and all of that, and it's perfect. And then, he's rolling on the floor laughing, and wardrobe is like, get off of the floor. I mean, he's a goof. He's a total nut. So I think that's what people would be shocked. He's very comfortable in his own skin. I love that about him. Got
it. We are running out of seasons of This Is Us. It's time.
What?
It could go on forever. So we need to talk about your dream scene. Is there a dream scene you'd love to do? Is there an actor on the show that you're dying to work with more closely? Is there a guest star you would just love to have on the show and act with them? Is it a fantasy sequence? The floor is yours.
Wow. I would like to do anything that we can while we have this power and this audience and this while the show is as big as it is, to lock down Bruce Willis somehow.
Yeah.
I'm not really interested in Bruce Willis coming on and acting with anyone else. I'm interested in acting with Bruce Willis. If we get Bruce Willis, the only thing that would be worse than not getting Bruce Willis is getting Bruce Willis and then it's not for me and I don't get to work with him. I would love that to happen. That would be sort of I've always admired him and his work, and just it's always been a thing for me. I always wanted to work with him. Gosh, on the show, it's hard because when I'm working with Chrissy, I'm in love with her. I love working with her. When I'm working with Chris, I love that. When I'm working with Sterling, I love that. Mandy, I'm so glad I got more time with Mandy, with Kevin and his mom, working together. That was nice because I typically don't get a lot of time with her. But when I'm working with those folks, it's always the ones that I'm not working with that I'm like, I wish I had more time with. There's just not enough time. I mean, they're all gems. They're all just salt of the earth, wonderful people. And then, truthfully, they're all, equally talented. So it's really just, it's a really great position to be in, where you could just literally pull one of them out of a hat and be like, well, this is going to be a great day. I'd like to do more directing. That would be fun. It's a lot of work and it's challenging, but you get to work with these amazing actors and sort of see them in a different light, from a different perspective. That was fun. But I'm a lucky man, dude. I got to be honest with you. I have never in a million years would have imagined that I would be on a show that not only is as good as it is, but and has the audience that it has, but that touches people's lives in a very personal way that I think they take with them for years and years and years. And so I have struck gold with the show, and I'm a very happy, lucky person.
Cool. Well, you're a lucky man, you say, but let's push your luck here. Let's go back to Bruce Willis real quickly. Particular scene that you'd like to do with him? I feel like it needs to be something like movie within the show, cool action scene. You're resting.
I think movie within the show, and it'd be cool to like get my ass kicked by him. You know what I mean? I think that'd be good. I would like to get beat up by Bruce. That'd be fun, right? By Bruce Willis. John McClane just comes in and just kicks your ass. But in true John McClane style and Bruce Willis style, he's going to take some lumps as well, which is cool, right?
Sure.
But he's getting back up. You can't kill him.
You're the man for the job.
We'll see.
Okay. Listen, Justin, thanks so much for taking the time. We appreciate it, and congrats on just a fantastic season and quite a finish too. We got very curious to see where things shake out next season.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, we talked to SKB. Now it's time to talk to SKW. Let's welcome the true glue of the family, Susan Kelechi Watson, aka Beth Pierson. Susan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is cool, man.
Yeah. So Beth has done many, many smart things over the last 4 seasons. But where does clearing everyone out of the way so Randall and Kevin can have their fight rank?
That's true.
She knew what was up.
You know what's up. You gotta have you also have to let people clear the air in the way that they need to. You know what I mean? You can't always just be trying to keep the peace. You know what I mean? Like sometimes being a peacemaker means like some drama has to go down to really like make peace and not just try to keep peace. So I feel that, you know, I know my husband, Beth knows her husband. She knows, you know, he can't let things go. You know what I mean? And she knows that the relationship between him and Kevin has always been a little fragile. And you have to know when to step back and let them work that out. And also, you know, Rebecca, as you know, their mom, she too can't step into that. You have to kind of let men do their thing and battle it out in the way that they need to. So it's not so much promoting fighting, you know what I mean? But like, you know, it's more like we need to let them do what they need to do to figure this out, to really figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. You've had some time to process it. This is a public event, but I would like to ask you, whose side did you find yourself taking? It's okay to share honestly and openly here.
Between Kevin and Randall?
Yeah.
I think Beth didn't think that Randall should have convinced his mom. You know, I do think that was her side. I think, you know, she feels like he overstepped some, but she knows that that's what, you know, he does. That's kind of his nature. That's what he does. So I would say if I was on a side, I'm always going to be on Randall's side, right? But like, do I think that he necessarily did the right thing? Maybe not this time.
Right. I heard it was on set. There were crew members were a little divided, and even Sterling said he felt him. He's like, I really see Team Kevin's side in this one. You know.
It's tricky, especially sometimes when, you know, this happened, you know, the season before when Randall and Beth were fighting, and it's tricky because sometimes you know when your character is kind of wrong, you know what I mean? But you got as the actor, but you have to fight, you know, as that character, and you know that, there's reasons that you're fighting, you know? So I know there's reasons that Randall is fighting for Rebecca. You know, he really loves his mom. He doesn't want to lose another parent. He doesn't, you know, he can't deal with that emotionally, and he wants to fix it. And that's his way of showing love. So, you know, like he has reasons, you know, but, you know, sometimes it just manifests in the wrong ways.
Absolutely. That's very well said. I mean, Beth is obviously extremely loyal, but she always calls it out as she sees it, which he needs. He needs someone to check him like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Beth is, as we said, is that voice of reason. What will that voice of reason be saying to Randall, who is now in the midst of this nasty feud as we look ahead to season 5? And this is not a fight that you can easily take back, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, that was rough. I remember watching it, you know, as an audience member and thinking like, wow, you know, and I had people texting me like, man, they gonna come back from this? And I was like, whoa. Yeah. So going into the next season, you know, again, it's one of those things that it's between them, and I'm a little bit on the periphery of it, but you kind of have to let the cards fall where they fall, right? It's a matter of, you know, if you went there, you kind of have to let the dust settle. And then also maybe it was always kind of meant to go there. You know, maybe that was stuff that has been building up forever, but they've been dancing around and they haven't been able to have a full relationship because of that. So there's the heaviness to it, but also if that's always been there, maybe it had to be said at some point. I'm sure they said it way worse than they, you know what I mean? I'm sure they look back on it like, I didn't even say it like that, you know, but if it was there, you know, it's the root of a deeper problem.
Right. That makes sense. What was the most challenging scene that you had to pull off in season 4? Beth telling Randall to go to therapy, not just because he needs it, but she needs it because she needs it, was a really interesting layered moment. That was my favorite scenes this year. But I'm curious for you, what was maybe the hardest one to pull off?
It was definitely the scene where Malik's family comes over to dinner and we get into this big fight. It's just a fight. You know what I mean? It's two families trying to protect their own. And we get into a fight with them. And it was hard for me because I was trying to figure out the balance. I didn't want it to tip into a street fight, you know what I mean, in the middle of the house. But this thing of like, don't step over the line either, you know? So it was this delicate balance of like, how do I keep this as two parents fighting for their kids, and not sort of, okay, let's take this outside, you know, that kind of energy. So that was a tricky scene to try to navigate the balance of that.
Yeah, I mean, that
really, really well directed by Ken Olin, I have to say. I remember that day very clearly on set, and he really steered the ship in all the right directions. Yeah.
Yeah. You were juggling a lot in that episode, Matt, and I wanted to ask you, take us behind the scenes of the comic relief of going to the closet, retreating with the wine into the closet. Is that trick red wine? What is that? What were you drinking?
You know what? They have this thing that it's like you can either do something that's a watered down version of a grape juice, right, or it's like an alcohol tasting thing. And I think I tried the alcohol because, you know, you want anything that's as close as you can get. Right. And what tripped me up the most was opening that damn bottle. It was like this bottle that you put it in and you snap it down, you snap it up and and sometimes I'd snap it up and it popped, you know, the wine would pop into my face and just all this kind of stuff was happening. But I remember loving doing that scene because I personally love comedy and I love the rhythm of comedy. And that scene for me, I was able to find such a rhythm of comedy in that scene that felt so fun to play, you know? And in the midst of all of this, you know, sometimes you're so riled up about something, you don't even realize we do this in life, that we're being funny, you know, like you're being insane and it's funny. And I love that, you know, in the midst of all that drama, there were these moments of just, she's still, you know, in this very passionate space, but there's all this like comic relief too. I love that scene. That's a really fun scene.
A lot of release, yeah. Speaking of lighter moments, what would you say the most fun you had shooting a scene in season 4 was?
Ooh, that's a good question. What was the most fun? Gosh, why does season 4 seem like light years? There's so much that has happened in the world since season 4. That's true. Isn't that crazy? But I definitely, some of the fun scenes that we do are usually like the Thanksgiving scenes and things like that, because even though they're the longest to shoot because there's so many of us, the fact that everybody's on set is usually a really good time. So there are scenes where, you know, there's Uncle Nicky, there's Rebecca, there's Miguel, there's, you know, Kevin, the whole family's in the Pierson, you know, house in Philly. And those are really fun because then, you know, when you cut, you get to hang out with everybody. So I like shooting.
Yeah, I got that. Okay. I'm wondering for you, when this character came into your life, on the page, you had to do a little bit of work to kind of flesh out this character and create this character. What was maybe an unlikely inspiration for you in bringing Beth to life? Something that people might be surprised by.
I think people a lot of times can associate a person with a character a lot. And I find myself really trying to distance me from Beth. So I think people will be surprised at how much I use the experiences of other women that I've heard throughout the years to kind of create Beth. Because me not being a mom, me not being married, but hearing what people desire still as a married woman with kids, the dreams they still desire, the way they still desire to be seen and heard, like that never was lost on me. And because I have a lot of friends or family, you know, they talk and they trust in you, and you find out like people want to be seen, not just as the wife and mother, they want to be seen as the woman that they are. And they still have dreams and they still have goals, and they don't feel like a complete person all the time just because they're the wife and the mom, you know, that they want to be a whole person first. So that was a lot of what I brought into Beth. Like I wanted to make sure that she was the type of woman who fought for that.
Got it. And speaking of surprising things, what is one thing people would be surprised to learn about Sterling K. Brown, who you share a ton of screen time with?
I don't know that they'd be surprised. Sterling is really a bit of an open book. I really, and that actually is something that I'm always surprised by, as how much of an open book that he is, like, and willing to be, you know? And so I don't know that, I think a lot of what you see is what you get. I also think that he's very silly, you know, that he can be even sillier than than what you see. Like we get, you know, we act a fool, you know, and we love that. And we like to have fun. So even in the midst of all the drama, you know, you can pretty much be sure that we're having a good time.
We are running out of seasons of This Is Us. It is time to talk about your dream scene. We got to log in those requests now. So that's an actor that you haven't worked with much that you'd like to, a guest star that you can bring on of your choosing, or a fantasy sequence, whatever you want.
Or a fantasy what?
A sequence, you know what I mean? Like, you know, Randall had his mushroom smoothie dreams, and you can have anything you want for Beth. What is your dream scene that you'd love to do in the next few seasons?
You know what? I would love an episode where Beth and Randall really try to have like a date night, or try to kind of really connect and sort of keep missing each other maybe, but then eventually kind of find each other in like the most unusual way. I would love to see what it is like, you know, when you're kind of in the throes of everyday life and you're really trying to go back to that original connection, and how they would navigate that, how they would, I want to see them, get to be like more passionate and just explore their connection more. Even in the midst of like what's going on with them job-wise, what's going on with them in, you know, new career horizons with, you know, bringing up, raising kids and all that kind of stuff. But I love getting into like their core connection, and just what would be a night where they don't talk about any of that stuff. And they just, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, what would that sound like? I don't even know. I don't know.
I think fans could totally root for a date night. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and congrats.
I love it. Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks, Dan.
All right, we're here with Chris Sullivan, who plays Toby Damon. Any relation to Matt Damon? I've been meaning to ask you that over the last few years.
You know what? I am of the firm belief that Toby's younger brother that he has a lot of resentment and awkward feelings around is absolutely Matt Damon. And I've been trying to reach out to his camp for seasons now to see if he'd come on and play my brother. But who knows? We got 2 more seasons, so maybe he'll come on and kind of complete that story. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's look back at season 4. What was the most challenging scene that you pulled off this past season? Toby's struggles and his candid admission that he wasn't connecting with his blind son would have to be high up there, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, that one is definitely high up there. I've had a lot of friends have children over the last year and a half, and one of the harder things for them to talk about, both the mothers and the fathers, not all of them, but a good number of them, talk about that lack of immediate connection to their child that they either thought was going to be there, or everyone told them was going to be there, or, you know, the fantasy fairy tale version of it dictated as such, and it just wasn't, and that they had to take some time to get to know their son or daughter, and allow this individual to individuate, to make themselves known, and to kind of come into this world, you know, through them. But so that was definitely difficult, that whole storyline. But logistically speaking and emotionally, the Heimlich maneuver scene this last year was really far more traumatizing than I thought it would be. Of course, we had little Wells there, our actual baby Jack, but we also had this silicone doll that we were using, because you certainly can't pound your palm on the back of a real baby over and over again. And it was just, that scene really hit me. One, I thought logistically it was going to be really difficult, and we managed to pull it off and make it very convincing. But two, just the emotional panic of the whole thing was hard.
Yeah, I bet. Looking across those 18 episodes of season 4, what would you isolate as your favorite scene to film?
My favorite scene to film. I think our last scene was a lot of fun. There was a lot of moving parts to it. With the baby, there's a whole new level of challenges as far as the amount of time we can work, and it's this unpredictable person who doesn't speak English yet or take direction. So it's always a lot of fun to kind of get in the groove with Wells and then get into a scene. And I think one of my favorite scenes to film with him was with him and Chrissy, was that last scene where we revisited the NICU ward at the hospital, and kind of had a moment to remember our time there, and to investigate the idea of adopting another child. That scene was proving to be a little difficult to get done, and then it just kind of fell into place in a real magical way. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that scene up, because that led to, like you said, a big moment, the decision to adopt a second child.
Right.
They recognize that it might be an emotional, if rash, decision when they're in the NICU, where Jack was born. It's bringing up a lot of memories out in the parking lot. They talk about still feeling the high, and then when they pull out, they reaffirm, we still want to do this. My view is that wasn't much time to reflect and reassess. Is this all a bit hasty? These two have their hands full already.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. And in my life, I find some of the best times to take on new challenges are when my hands are full. At least that has been historically the case. I guess we'll find out. We know they have this conversation, and we know that Jack has a sister. And so we will now wait and see how the This Is Us writers connect those two dots. It's one of my favorite ways that our writers tell our stories, by giving you the end point and the beginning point, and then now we get to enjoy the story of how these two dots get connected.
Yeah. Well, adoption obviously carries special meaning on the show. Kate certainly has family members with experience in this area, including Rebecca and Randall. What intrigues you about that journey specifically? We had the challenging birth in the NICU, and now adoption, which presents different challenges.
Yeah, I think This Is Us delivers. I think This Is Us presents a very open-hearted and open-minded vision of what family can be and what family can mean. And we get kind of stuck in the idea that we're very stuck in the idea that it's a mother, a father, and a baby. And adoption is one of the themes in our show that really challenges that structure of what it means to have the typical American family. And it's one of my favorite things about this show. This show's a bit of a handbook for me on a life well lived, on a life lived in connection, and a life lived in compassion and understanding for our fellow human beings. And so the theme of adoption and the idea that there is a stranger out there who already exists, who needs a family, needs a place to live, someone to protect them, someone to guide them, and that this family is kind of all in on that idea is pretty lovely to me.
Okay. Let's move on to some fun questions. An unlikely.
Enough with these questions. Let's get to fun questions.
What is, when you were kind of creating Toby and shaping him, what was an unlikely influence in that process? People would maybe be surprised that you were drawing from, whether it's another character that you always admired or loved, or just you wanted to capture some of that spirit.
I think one of the joys of the way that this show is structured is that we each have our storylines, and when I watch the show, sometimes my scenes go, right, I'm in this show. Oh, here's my storyline. And then there's all these other rich storylines with amazing actors. And I think I have drawn and learned quite a bit from everyone else on this show, from watching Mandy and Milo and all of them. But what I really kind of leaned towards, and it's a good question because it's been kind of a secret, and no one's really ever asked me this, but I have leaned and drawn from both Justin and Sterling and Milo, and taken from them character traits, kind of shaped a man that their sister or daughter might want to fall in love with, or might end up falling in love with. So taking a look at what Milo is putting into Kate's father, and taking some of those things that maybe Kate would find attractive in a man and putting them into Toby, or taking some of the sense of humor or loyalty from her brothers and infusing that into this person. So I've not only, been able to develop a character that this woman might fall in love with, but I've learned so much about acting and my process by watching all of the other the actors on my show. Cool.
What is one thing that you can reveal about working with Chrissy Metz that people don't know?
Chrissy Metz is but everybody knows this. She's such a joyous person, and such a giving. She gives of herself in so many ways that people know this. She's even more fun than she appears on screen. We have kind of an incredible amount of laughter on a set of a show that would be considered dramatic.
Right.
And yeah, she's one of these, for an actor who has stepped into her first major project, she just took right to it in a way that some actors who've been at it for years I've seen not be able to take to a character or to a role or to a project. And so I've had a front row seat for every scene. And it's been a real honor to watch.
Okay. And finally, we've got 2 seasons left, apparently. A dream scene. Is there an actor on the show you're dying to work with more closely? Maybe a guest star you'd like to have. Maybe there's a fantasy sequence. What is Chris Sullivan's dream scene that he would love to do in the next season?
Again, Matt Damon, if you're watching, it's the only logical way to wrap up the Toby Damon story. So Dan Fogelman's cell phone number is...
It made it sound like it was cutting out, which is perfect.
7.
Yeah.
Okay. Give him a ring. who, oh, man, we've had so many amazing actors come through. I think I would like to meet Toby. Toby has siblings. Toby has a brother and a sister. But I think, if I don't know how we would do it, but Ron is just one of my favorite actors I've ever seen, and I don't know if there's any way to bring William and Toby, back together, but that man just cuts straight to my heart every time I see him, either on screen or off. Yeah, that's my answer.
All right.
Ron and Matt Damon.
The three of you, that's actually quite a scene when we tie Dan in knots there trying to get him to that scene.
There we go.
All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Season 4, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right.